Surrounded by Idiots. Let's get today's episode started. Alright, Surrounded by Idiots is a book, and today I'm just going to go ahead and make a video series based on it. First off, we're going to talk about the personalities and how the system works and everything. What you've got to know is that the person who wrote this book, Thomas ERIKSON, is a Swedish person, and he went ahead and was inspired by this person who and his father went ahead and created this. By the way, his name was David Bonstester, and his dad was a personality expert called Bill Bonstester, and they made this DISC method based software system. It's just going to go ahead and talk about and guess your personalities based on what you've done and your actions, and it's pretty accurate as well. And they run their own company called the TTI Success Insights. Unfortunately, Bill has passed away a few years ago, and right now this is the inspiration for this book too. By the way, the DISC method goes ahead and it derives you into splitting you into these different categories. It splits you into the red category, who are dominant and commanding, or you're in the yellow kinds, where you're social and optimistic, or you're in the green people, who just go ahead and are laid back and are pretty friendly, and the blues. Now, the blues themselves are analytical and maybe a little too precise too. Now, all these traits are awesome too, and there's this little spectrum that we go ahead and compare these guys on. Let me show you here. Now, first out, this spectrum, I actually just took a photo of it from the book. I just didn't feel like making my own. Anyways, the reds, however, are usually task-oriented and issue-oriented, as well as extroverts and active. Like, they're extroverts, active, and implementers. If you don't do it quick enough, their idea of efficiency is quickness. If you don't do it quick enough, well, you're a failure. And they rather break a few laws or a few rules just to get there faster. Like, I'm going to get there faster and I get a speeding ticket. Well, they don't mind, and as long as they get there faster, and they wouldn't mind paying the speeding ticket just because they just got there faster. I mean, you're supposed to get there at 9 a.m. and you get there at like 8 a.m. and they're all like, hey, you're too fast. And they're like, okay, I'm just paying it. By the way, the blues, who are next to the reds, are also kind of task-oriented and issue-oriented, but not as much. They're more introverts, they're passives, and they're reserved. They're more analytical ones. They would rather stay there looking at everything before going into the next one. And they triple check, quadruple check. They're the kind who triple check, quadruple check, quintuple check, septuple check everything before they even go into the next step. Which is pretty irritating to the reds sometimes, but unless you have other qualities inside of you, well, that's great too. Next up, we have the yellows. Now, the yellows are supposed to be opposites of the blues. They're also extroverts and they're active, implemented. However, they're also somewhat relationship-oriented too. They'd rather go ahead and create relationships too. They're the ones with the most LinkedIn profile. They're the ones with the most LinkedIn contacts. They're the ones who have the most Snapchat contacts. They're the ones who always go ahead and talk to others about things. But the bad thing about them is that they don't seem to be going ahead so much. Once they go ahead and say they're going to do something, they start the motivation, but then the motivation goes somewhere else, and they just go ahead and start these new projects, which is why they're called kind of lazy and implemented. Windbags too, they like talking a lot. If they're not the center of attention and they're not the one who's talking, they'll die. We'll see that in a few other episodes too. And finally we have the greens. Now, the greens, compared to the yellows, are a bit more introverted, sure, but they're also relationship oriented as well. They rather avoid conflict just so they can save a relationship, because it's messy. No one likes a conflict too. Some people do. They live for the conflict, but greens would rather go ahead and stay out of conflicts that would make a fuss and would make more than necessary of a big deal. And of course, they're also introverts, they're passive, and they're reserved. Of course, people can't always be just in any one of these colors. Someone can be like blue-green. Like only 5% of the population, according to the book, are apparently at the extremes. It's 80%. Well, they're in like two color types. However, there's like this 3% who are in 3 color types, and none of them are in all 4 of them. None of them have all 4 traits, at least none the author has seen so far. Now, there are a few more things to really talk about these blue, reds, greens, and yellows too. There's more to this than meets the eye as well. Here are a few of the traits, here are a few of the words that goes ahead and describes them. The reds are seen as aggressive. The reds are seen as aggressive, ambitious, strong-willed. They're goal-oriented, they're pushing, they're problem solvers, and they want to win. We'll talk more about that in the red sections of these video series. They're also pretty independent too, and they're the bosses. Think of the CEOs. The yellows are talkative, enthusiastic, persuasive, creative, optimistic, and they're pretty social as well too. They're self-censored though, and they're easygoing, but they need attention, and they are adaptable, sure, but they're terrible at adapting to something that is opposite towards them too. They're charming though, and people don't mind they're late because they're going to be the highlight of the conversation. And these are like, think of Homer Simpson, but real life. Greens are patient, relaxed, self-controlled, reliable, composed, loyal, and discreet, supportive, good listeners, helpful, and they're also pretty good producers too. However, if they don't have this feeling that they have to change, then they don't change at all. They just wait and wait and wait until like, okay, I'm changing, and then they do change. Once they say they're going to do something, they actually do it. They may agree with something, but they may not actually go ahead and do things too. They say, oh yeah, that's true, but I'm still going to believe in this anyway. Yeah, that's kind of the thing. Think of the workers, the office workers, the ones that go ahead into the office and listen to the CEOs too, and they're pretty compatible with Reds as well, because the Reds like to give orders, the Greens like to use the orders. They don't like giving orders themselves. And the Blues, well, the Blues are a little weird too. Conscientious, systematic, distant, correct, objective. If you're incorrect, then they have to point it out. And however, it's only necessary for them to know that they're the smartest. Like, for example, you're working on this puzzle. 2 hours later, a person in the audience who has been there the entire 2 hours simply points out the solution, and they're like, where were you 2 hours ago? Why didn't you say it 2 hours ago? And they're like, well, you guys never asked. That's kind of annoying things about blues. Then again, reds, yellows, greens, and blues all have their downsides, but that's why a mix of them always is better. Some of the strengths outshine the weaknesses, and this is just the part 1 of the Surrounded by Idiots guide too. There are a few more things that we have to talk about, like why we are the way we are. We just evolved into all this. I can't get into this whole book, or else, well, why read the book? But go ahead and read the book. I'm just gonna go ahead and summarize this book as fast as possible in these video lectures, and I hope you guys actually did enjoy something. Next time I'm gonna be a bit more artful, and until next time, peace, bye bye. Next up, we're going to be talking about the Reds. Everything that annoys them, everything that just goes ahead makes them why they are, and how to calm them down. See ya!